Hello, and I hope you can hear me. So today I want to talk about something more like simple, but I think we'll see how it goes. I kind of wanted to feel things right now, and seeing where things go, and maybe start to emphasize on something specific. I'm gonna use somebody else's chart, um, and I wanted to, yeah. We'll see how it goes. I'm not really sure what to talk about. I'm just gonna go. It's like on the whim. Okay, so in this chart, I wanted to kind of start with the ascendant. You definitely can start with basic stuff. People say ascendant and then go into it's called the triad. You start with the ascendant and then you go into the sun and then you go into the moon. Or the moon is actually down here because it kind of like gets to know you as a person, right? Ascendant is your mask, your sun is kind of like your identification, but the moon is like a deeper sort of identification. It's an awareness. So as you may already know, the mask is your ascendant is the one of the orientation points that shows how you give yourself out to the world. It's how you package yourself. It's kind of represents your physical body, your health, childhood years, approach to life, worldly outlook, appearance, and the beginnings of all enterprises. But the mask specifically is just more like the mask itself. It's the actual orientation point. Whereas the first house, that's more of the physical body, something to do with birth, all that stuff. They're very related to each other. Basically, you can just talk about the ascendant and talk about the first house. It's basically the same thing, except I kind of like to go more specific because the ascendant is kind of like, like I said, orientation point. It's a starting point. What is revealed to the world, right? Naturally. In this one, the ascendant was in Scorpio. So this person tends to not reveal themselves. They tend to many people will probably think they're hard to read. They have this appearance of like sexiness, actually. To be honest, like this person, I thought, this is an old friend of mine. He's from Turkey. He's sexy. And he's I mean, to me, at least, he wears an earring too. He likes this kind of like, the way he appears is kind of like, there's a certain mystery to it. It's a layer of mystery that's the mask, right? It's because it's also the physical body. It means that he probably likes things that are kind of dangerous, risk-taking, how he goes out there. He's very like out there. I remember when he got COVID the first time, he started caring less and less about it. He was like, oh, okay, well, it's nothing, right? That's very Scorpio. It's very like, dare, I do, right? Very risk-taking. He has, obviously, he's Turkish. Some Turks have like blonde hair because of the history. He has black hair. It's very alluring. Besides that, not to mention, rather, is that because Ascendant is in Scorpio, we have to look into that's a ruling planet. Here, Pluto was in Sagittarius and was in retrograde. So that means Pluto's effects are delayed. Pluto is the urge to regenerate. So for him, when he appears to other people in terms of that regenerative ability to cope and deal with changes, to go deep into oneself or one's purpose, whether it's generational or individual, he appears to be kind of more. He's not like the heavy Plutonian sort of appearance. It's still there though. So he kind of realizes that a little bit more later in life, or at least later, in a later time. So his regenerative abilities tend to kind of slow down. So I remember him like when he went out on he visited a castle or something, it took him a while to heal. Right? This is the first house stuff, right? So he does take a lot of time for himself. And that's kind of an instinctive thing. He needs to feel that. But because Pluto was in the second house, we also have to think about not just how it affects his body, but his possessions, the things that he values, possessions, richness. Could be material things. It could be things that represent richness or freedom through material things. It could be either way. Because it was in Sagittarius, Plutonian people in Sagittarian Plutonians, that generation has a tendency to find the genuineness and the real, sort of dig deep, like removing the peeling away, the destruction and transformation, regeneration of adventure and what it means to really live life, and optimism. What is real optimism? What is real beliefs? What is real beliefs? What is real organized belief, or church as a structure, or any of that Sagittarian sort of stuff? Traveling as well, languages. for him, how he projects that onto the world is his adventurous side is limited in this case. He's cautious, but not too cautious. So he has that scorpionic sort of like caution. Should I trust them? Should I do this and stuff like that? And at the same time, sort of still trusting, right? Because that's very Sagittarius, very optimistic sign, full of growth, and it's ruled by Jupiter. Then now we have to look into what planets aspect his ascendant. So we have one here. We have actually two planets was actually square to his ascendant. So what that means is that it adds a lot of mystery to it, but it's also weird. He probably comes off as this weird person who's you don't know what to expect about what he believes. That's Neptune. You don't know what to expect about how he's like his own mystery. Like that's that delusion, right? That illusion, mystery, fantasy. So his appearance is kind of off. And for some people, is he here? Is he not here? Is he aloof and all that stuff? So plus we have the Plutonian retrograde here. So even more reason to like wonder, oh, okay, where's he coming from? So he's really hard to read, basically. And then we have to look at other planets that are aspected to his ascendant. You have a quincunx from almost a perfect aspect, actually. 6 degrees, 7 degrees, Sun, Aries. Yes, he's identifies as Aries. Adventurous, risk-taking, sort of like conqueror, like very curious, living in the present moment. Sometimes he has to, when it comes to that, it's all about adaptation. The way people perceive him seem to be like, again, he's mysterious, but sometimes he has to adapt to people who give him energy, right? The fifth house, this is a fifth house issue. Because of this quincunx here. Quincunx is not a strong aspect, but it is still vital because it's all about adaptation. And I noticed that when we were talking before, he's always had this sort of adventurousness to him. He's curious. He wants to relate with people, but they just don't know how to express. They don't know how to like relate with him. Right? Aries is very curious. He's very childlike. It was in 7 degrees, of course, here. But we have to look into Mars. Now, Mars now goes into the 6th house. So the 6th house, Mars was actually also in Aries. So there's a lot of Martian, so to speak, not the alien Martian, but like whole get-going kind of action-taking sort of person. There's a color. There's a lot of fire in his sun. When Sun in Aries, Mars being in also Aries, but you look at Mars and you look at where what planets it's conjuncting. We can zoom in here. Mars was conjunct Moon, probably also Ceres here, and that tells me that he tends to headstrong in his emotions, and when it comes specifically to his health. He's very curious, but he's very like, okay, I just want to do this. I feel like doing this. He learns from it though, because it is a conjunction. He actually grows through that process. It's a challenging aspect. So he knows how to grow through that, but also like having self-care. It definitely appears more in his work life, his unconscious, and he's not aware of it. Although because he's emotionally aware of it, maybe he's not mentally aware of it. The 6th house is about workplace and the unconscious, so it's habits that we just routinely do, mundane things. But because his moon is there, it literally like kind of brings that out. He also has moon in Aries, which is interesting because he's now double fire. That makes him very, very adventurous, very like curious, very like all about that energy of spark, that daringness. Because it's Aries. Aries is all about conquest. Aries is all about being in the present moment. Like I said, assertiveness for sure. So he's quite assertive, actually. He shared his actual thing with me, his contact. Even though it wasn't loud, he was like willing to risk that. Yeah? So Aries are risk taking, but also self-care in that. So he's growing through that. He's able to go through that. I feel like that's the way he takes care of himself. Even though he comes off weird and has all these challenges, he has to adapt his own that he does to feel at home and feel good about himself. So he might go into something like sport. He might go into something like anything that's like daring. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's daring. He identifies with that, right? Because it's in the 5th house. It's right at home. Let's look into other aspects to the 6th, to his ascendant. The north node, is in 10 degrees, but it actually is in sextile aspect to his ascendant. I would say that he has this sort of unknown, ability to figure out what his Virgo North Node journey is in this life, getting to know, to be more grounded, to be more specific, to be more about hard work, because his South Node is opposite of that, 10 degrees in Pisces. It's not showing up here, but 10 degrees Pisces here is conjunct to his Jupiter. So that means that he's growing through what he's learned before in a past life and having those things that he's comfortable with, being open, believing, accepting, loving. But now he's learning to be more critical about things. And I think that kind of ties in with, if you look at Chiron, where's Chiron? Right here. It ties back into the first house stuff. Even though Chiron was not conjunct to his ascendant, it still deals with his first house stuff. Chiron in retrograde, I have that placement too. It's about delayed realization of like that sort of wounding, struggles, and learning from that. But he has to learn that through giving service to other people, like to help other people. That's Chiron. Chiron is healing through integration, healing through balancing what the past is with what the future is, what is stable and what needs to change. That's Chiron. But because it's delayed, it's in retrograde, he starts to realize that a little bit later in life. I think the degree has something to do with the fact that something happened. He maybe have lost something at the age of 18 or around that age, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, around that. And so that ties in with his North Node to be more, it's about power struggles. His wounding is regarding power struggles and his placement in managing his own identity, not identity, but like his own transformational abilities, psychic as well. And that ties into his path to realizing himself in the North Node, his path today. To be critical, but not to be too critical. This is an overall video about like his ascendant, and that's as far as I go with this one, because I'm sure the video is going to go longer if I go into the sun and also the moon as well. I kind of tied in some of those as well. But in any case, bye!